My name is Nana May, and this happened to me. She didn't ask. She didn't discuss it. She decided. Without me. Why was I the last to know? Powerless. I was standing in my own kitchen when my phone buzzed. The kettle was boiling. The afternoon sun fell across the marble countertops I had paid for 15 years ago. My house, my rules, my memories in every corner. Or so I thought. The message wasn't even sent to me directly. It was in the family group chat. The one I created. The one I named. The one I paid the phone bill for when my daughter couldn't. I wiped my hands on a towel before opening it. I remember thinking it was probably another grocery list, or one of those blurry photos of the twins covered in paint. Instead, I read, starting next month, Mom will be staying here full-time to help with the kids. It's the only way this will work. There were thumbs up emojis, a heart from my son-in-law. Even my sister had reacted, but no one had asked me. I stared at the message, so long the screen dimmed. Full-time. Help with the kids. It's the only way this will work. My chest tightened, but I typed carefully. Sweetheart, I think there's been some confusion. 3 dots appeared immediately, then disappeared, then appeared again. Finally, her reply came privately. Mom, we'll talk tonight. Please don't make this dramatic. Dramatic. The word sat in my throat like a bone. I wasn't dramatic. I was tired. I was 62 years old. And apparently I had just been assigned a new job. Without pay. Without consent. Without warning. When my daughter, Lila, was born, I promised myself she would never feel small. I worked double shifts at the hospital cafeteria while her father found himself. I missed birthdays. I pawned jewelry. I sold my wedding ring. After everything I sacrificed. When did I stop mattering? By 6 o'clock, Lila arrived with the twins. She didn't kiss me hello. She didn't look nervous. She looked resolved, like someone who had rehearsed. Mom, she said briskly, removing her coat. We need structure. Structure. The twins ran past her into the living room. One of them knocked over the ceramic bowl my mother left me. It shattered. Neither child apologized. Lila didn't notice. I'm listening, I said. She sat at the kitchen island like it was hers. You know childcare is expensive, and daycare wait lists are ridiculous. And you're alone here anyway. Alone. The house suddenly felt colder. I'm not alone, I said softly. You don't work anymore. I blinked. I retired. Exactly. The kettle clicked off behind me. The silence afterward felt deliberate. We've been thinking, she continued. You should move in with us. Help with the kids. Cook. Just until we stabilize. We. That word again. You mean, I said carefully, you've already decided. She exhaled, irritated. Mom, don't start. Start what? Defending myself? This house is too big for you anyway, she added. It doesn't make sense financially. Financially. My name is on the deed. I paid off the mortgage 3 years ago. I still remember the final bank notification. Loan account closed. I cried that night. Not because of the money, because I had finally secured something no one could take from me. Or so I thought. You could sell this place, Lila continued. Move closer to us. Use the equity to help with the kids' private school. There it was. The real plan. I felt something shift inside me. Not anger. Not yet. Awareness. Lila, I asked quietly, did you tell the group chat before telling me? She hesitated. That's not the point. It was exactly the point. She pulled out her phone. I even talked to Mark about the spare room. We can convert it into a nanny suite for you. A nanny suite. In my own daughter's house. I looked at her face. The same eyes I once wiped tears from. The same lips that once called me her hero. Now she spoke like I was a resource. A utility. An unpaid employee. I didn't agree to this, I said. Her jaw tightened. You don't have to agree. We're family. Family. The word felt different now. Heavy. Weaponized. And if I say no? I asked. She stared at me for a long moment. Then she said it. Then I don't know how we'll keep this house. The kettle was still warm when I touched it. I realized she wasn't talking about her house. She meant mine. I felt my pulse in my ears. What does that mean? She didn't answer directly. Instead, she stood and walked toward the hallway. You should check your email. And just like that, she left the kitchen. I didn't move at first. My hands felt numb. Then my phone buzzed again. Email notification. From a number I didn't recognize. Subject line: property review notice. My breath caught. I opened it. It looked official. Too official. Legal formatting. Letterhead. It stated that my property had been flagged for assessment review following a financial complaint linked to shared family interests. Shared family interests? I don't have shared ownership. My name is the only one on the deed. I checked the attachment. There was a scanned document. My property deed, with a second name typed underneath mine. Lila. I stopped breathing. That's impossible. I never added her. I would remember that, wouldn't I? My phone buzzed again. This time it wasn't a message. It was a bank alert. Unusual login attempt detected. My knees weakened. I leaned against the counter. In the living room, the twins were laughing. Lila was speaking softly on her phone. I told you she'd see it, she whispered. See what? I walked toward the hallway slowly. Each step felt like walking underwater. She turned when she saw me. Her face wasn't guilty. It was impatient. Mom, she said quietly, covering the phone speaker. We're trying to protect assets. Assets? I am not an asset. This is fraud, I said. Her eyes hardened. Don't be dramatic. Again. That word. You've been forgetful lately, she added calmly. The doctor even mentioned mild cognitive decline. I froze. The doctor? What doctor? I never. She lowered her voice. Mom, if something happens to you and the house isn't protected, it'll go to probate. We're just being proactive. My vision blurred. I had gone to the doctor for routine blood work last month. Lila had insisted on coming with me. She'd filled out forms while I waited. Forms I didn't read. My stomach dropped. What did you sign? I whispered. She didn't answer. Instead, she said something into the phone. Yeah, she's reacting. Reacting. As if I was unstable. As if I was proving her case. I suddenly felt very, very tired. I need to see those papers, I said. You will, she replied. After dinner. After dinner. Like I was a child asking for dessert. The twins ran down the hallway then, giggling. One of them grabbed my leg. Grandma, are you moving in with us? I looked down at his hopeful face. I didn't know what to say. Because I didn't know if I still owned my own house. Because I didn't know what I had signed. Because I didn't know who that lawyer was on the phone. Because for the first time in my life, I wasn't sure if I was being helped or erased. And that's when the doorbell rang. Not a knock. The smart camera alert chimed. Lila's phone lit up instantly. She smiled. They're early, she said. They? I turned toward the front door. Two men in suits stood outside. One held a folder. The other carried a tablet. The notification pinged again. Visitor detected. I felt my heart slow into something cold. Calculated. Planned. This wasn't a conversation. This was a process. And I was the last to know. I looked at my daughter. Really looked at her. She didn't look cruel. She looked determined. The door opened before I could tell her not to touch it. The men stepped inside like they had been invited for coffee, not confrontation. One of them smiled politely, the kind of smile professionals practice in mirrors. The other glanced around my foyer, eyes scanning corners, ceiling, walls, noting the cameras. Of course they were. This was documentation, procedure, evidence in the making. Mrs. May Thompson, the taller one asked. My daughter answered for me. Yes, that's her. That's her. Not my mother. Not Mom. Just her. I straightened my back. I can speak for myself. The man nodded, tapping his tablet. We're here regarding the property co-ownership update and care assessment documentation. Care assessment. The words felt clinical. Cold. I never agreed to co-ownership, I said evenly. Lila sighed beside me, already exhausted with me. Mom, we discussed this. No, I replied. You discussed it. I listened. The shorter man opened his folder and pulled out copies. My signature was there. My full legal name in blue ink. Dated 3 weeks ago. The doctor's appointment. I remembered Lila handing me a clipboard. Just routine consent forms, she'd said. Insurance updates. I hadn't worn my reading glasses that day. I trusted her. The taller man spoke again. Mrs. Thompson, these documents indicate voluntary addition of your daughter as secondary authority in matters of estate protection and cognitive assistance. Cognitive assistance. There must be a mistake, I whispered. Lila's voice lowered, controlled. Mom, please. We talked about your memory lapses. I forget where I put my keys, I said sharply. That doesn't make me incompetent. The men exchanged a glance, subtle, professional, dangerous. The taller one swiped on his tablet. There was also a physician's note recommending early intervention planning. I felt the room tilt slightly. What note? Lila folded her arms. Dr. Patel mentioned mild cognitive impairment risk factors. You know that? No, he hadn't. He'd said my blood pressure was slightly elevated. That was all. I looked at the signature on the physician line. It didn't look like his handwriting. My pulse began to pound again, but this time something else rose with it. Clarity. Slow. Steady. You're saying, I said carefully, that my daughter now has authority over my property because of a risk factor? It's preventative, the shorter man replied. Very common. Common. Is it common to feel ambushed in your own foyer? Is it common to realize your child may have prepared legal steps behind your back? The twins' laughter drifted from the living room, oblivious. Cartoon sounds echoed cheerfully. Lila stepped closer to me and lowered her voice. Mom, if something happens to you, probate could freeze everything. We're protecting the house. Protecting or positioning. And the email? I asked. The financial complaint? She hesitated just slightly. Standard review process when ownership updates occur. Ownership updates. Without conversation. Without consent that I understood. The taller man extended a pen toward me. We just need confirmation of continued agreement. Then the review will close. There it was. The trap. Sign again. Make it clean. Make it official. I stared at the pen but didn't take it. Something inside me, something old and quiet, whispered, Stop. I need time, I said. Lila stiffened. Mom, I need copies of everything, I continued, and I want my own attorney to review them. The silence that followed was no longer professional. It was irritated. The shorter man cleared his throat. Delays can complicate asset stability. My assets, I replied. For the first time, my voice didn't shake. Lila's jaw tightened. Why are you making this harder than it needs to be? Harder? I almost laughed. You added your name to my house, I said softly, without sitting down with me first. And I'm the one making this hard. Her composure cracked just a fraction. We're drowning, Mom. Childcare, mortgage, tuition. We can't keep doing this alone. There it was. Not concern. Need. I felt a flicker of guilt. The familiar one. The one mothers carry like a second spine. After everything I sacrificed, was I about to refuse her? The taller man gently interrupted. Perhaps we should reschedule once Mrs. Thompson has consulted independent counsel. Independent? Yes. Lila exhaled sharply. Fine. But her eyes were calculating now, measuring next steps. The men gathered their documents. As they stepped outside, the taller one paused. Mrs. Thompson, I recommend reviewing your digital access as well. There were recent login activities tied to shared device permissions. Shared device permissions. My stomach dropped. Lila had set up my phone last year. She said it would be easier if our accounts were linked for emergencies. The door closed. The house felt different now, like walls had shifted an inch inward. Lila turned to me slowly. You embarrassed me. I blinked. Embarrassed you? In front of professionals. Now they think we're unstable. We. Always we. When were you planning to tell me about the doctor's note? I asked. Her eyes flickered. It was implied. No, I said quietly. It wasn't. She grabbed her purse. You're being paranoid. Paranoid. Another word. Another seed. I walked past her toward the kitchen table and picked up my phone. My hands were steady now. I opened my banking app. Password error. I tried again. Locked out. A new notification appeared. Two-step verification updated. Updated. Not by me. I looked up slowly. Did you change my bank security settings? Her silence answered. It was necessary, she said finally. You almost got scammed last year. It was a spam email. I didn't click it. She had, and blamed me. I felt something shift again. Not fear this time. Not confusion. Anger. But quiet anger. Controlled anger. The kind that doesn't scream. The kind that documents. Give me my phone, she said suddenly. I stepped back instinctively. No. Her eyes widened slightly. I had never said no to her like that. Mom, if you start calling people and twisting things. Twisting? You mean telling them? I asked. Her composure fractured. You don't understand how serious this is. Oh, I understand, I said softly. I understand that my email was accessed. I understand that my bank was modified. I understand that my signature was used. I understand that a narrative is forming, forgetful, declining, needs assistance. I walked toward the hallway and retrieved my reading glasses from the drawer where I always keep them. I put them on slowly. Then I opened the email attachment again. And this time I read every word, clause by clause, line by line. Halfway down the second page, I saw it. Power of temporary fiduciary oversight. Temporary, but renewable. And beneath it, a checkbox. Checked. My chest tightened again, but not with panic. With precision. The checkbox wasn't filled in blue ink. It was black. Printed. Not handwritten. I looked up at Lila. Did I check this box? She hesitated. Just long enough. I don't remember, she said. Of course she didn't. That was the narrative now. Memory. Decline. Confusion. The twins ran in again, arguing over a toy. Life continuing around a quiet legal earthquake. I closed the document. I'm calling my lawyer. Her face went pale. You don't have a lawyer. Yes, I said calmly. I do. She didn't know about him. Because I never told her. 3 years ago, when I paid off the mortgage, I met with an estate attorney. Just in case. Just to be prepared. His card was still in my desk drawer. And for the first time that evening. My name is Nana May, and this happened to me. I didn't sleep that night. Lila left before midnight, claiming the twins were overstimulated. She kissed the air near my cheek, like obligation instead of affection, and walked out carrying tension in her shoulders. But she didn't look afraid. Not yet. After the house fell silent, I locked every door. Then I unplugged the living room camera. Just one. To see if anyone would notice. I sat at the kitchen table with my reading glasses on and spread the printed documents in front of me like pieces of a puzzle that didn't want to be solved. Power of temporary fiduciary oversight. Cognitive assistance planning. Joint property review. The language was designed to sound protective. Soft. Responsible. But underneath the softness was control. I ran my finger over my signature again. The curve of the M. The tail of the Y. It looked like mine. But the pressure felt wrong. Lighter. Rushed. And the checkbox beside fiduciary oversight was printed in machine ink. Not pen. Which meant one thing. It wasn't checked when I signed it. A slow, cold realization settled into my bones. Someone completed that document after it left my hands. I picked up my phone. Still locked out of my banking app. Still updated security settings. I checked my email login history. There were 3 unfamiliar IP addresses, all from within the same city. One of them listed as a shared device. Shared with who? I already knew. At 7:12 a.m., I dialed the number on the card I had kept for 3 years. The line rang twice. Law offices of Daniel Reed. My throat tightened unexpectedly. Mr. Reed, this is May Thompson. We met regarding estate planning. A pause. Then recognition. Mrs. Thompson. I remember. Congratulations again on paying off your home. I almost cried at that sentence. He remembered. Yes, I said quietly. I may need to see you urgently. He didn't ask questions. Come in at 10. No hesitation. No judgment. Just 10. His office smelled like coffee and old paper. Solid things. Reliable things. I handed him the folder without speaking. He read slowly. Thoroughly. Didn't rush. Didn't interrupt. I watched his expression instead of the documents. That's when I saw it. Not shock. Not confusion. Recognition. This checkbox, he said calmly, tapping the fiduciary oversight line. Did you mark this? No. He adjusted his glasses. And this physician's note. You never discuss cognitive decline with your doctor? No. He leaned back in his chair. Mrs. Thompson, I'm going to ask you something directly. Do you feel pressured or manipulated regarding your property? The word manipulated landed differently than dramatic. It was precise. Yes, I said. He nodded once. That checkbox appears digitally added. The inconsistency doesn't match the signature. Also, he flipped the page. This physician ID number is incomplete. Incomplete. Meaning? It may not be fraudulent yet, he continued carefully, but it is irregular. Irregular. A polite word for wrong. I felt my lungs fill properly for the first time in 24 hours. So I still own my house? I asked. He looked at me evenly. Yes, solely. The relief hit like a wave. But it wasn't clean relief. It was edged with something sharper. Anger. My daughter had tried. Maybe not to steal, but to position, to secure, to control. Next, he said, we file a formal inquiry with the clinic to verify that physician note. We also request access logs from your bank and email provider. If someone altered documents post-signature, that becomes serious. Serious. The word echoed. My hands were steady now. Do I confront her? I asked. He paused. That depends. Do you want the truth? Or do you want peace? The question lingered. Truth or peace? For 62 years, I chose peace. Peace in arguments. Peace in marriage. Peace in parenting. Peace meant swallowing. Peace meant staying quiet. But peace had just tried to sign my house away. I want the truth, I said. He didn't blink. Then don't confront her yet. Gather evidence first. Evidence. The word made everything feel less emotional, more strategic. He printed copies of everything and placed them in a new folder labeled M. Thompson Property Review. My name, on top, where it belonged. When I returned home, something felt off immediately. The living room camera I had unplugged was back on. Green light blinking. I stood very still. I hadn't plugged it back in. I walked slowly into the hallway. The spare key hook was empty. My daughter still had her copy. My stomach tightened. She had been here. While I was at the lawyer's office, I checked the kitchen drawer where I kept important mail. Shifted. Not messy. Just slightly disturbed. Like someone careful. Like someone searching. My phone buzzed. A text from Lila. Are you okay? You left the house this morning. Left the house. How did she know? I hadn't told her. Then I remembered. The shared device permissions. Location sharing. I opened my settings. Location services shared with Lila. I turned it off. Immediately, another text arrived. Why did you turn off your location? I stared at the message. Not concerned. Not loving. Monitoring. I typed slowly. Because I can. 3 dots appeared. Then vanished. No reply. That evening, my bank called. A real person this time. Mrs. Thompson, we're reviewing unusual administrative changes made to your account. Were you aware of a request for secondary financial oversight? Secondary oversight. The same language. No, I said calmly. The woman on the line lowered her voice slightly. There was an attempt to assign a family proxy. Proxy. Another word for control. Block it, I said. It's already under investigation. Investigation. The word echoed again. I sat at my dining table after the call and allowed myself 1 minute. 1 minute to feel it fully. The betrayal. The humiliation. The shock. After everything I sacrificed. When did I become someone to manage? A knock at the door interrupted my thoughts. Not the doorbell. A knock. Firm. Measured. I opened it slowly. Lila stood there alone. No twins. No smile. Her eyes scanned my face. You went to a lawyer, she said. Not a question. A statement. I didn't answer immediately. How do you know that? I asked. She exhaled sharply. Mom, you turned off your location. You never do that unless you're upset. Upset. That was the narrative she preferred. Emotional. Overreacting. I stepped aside without inviting her in. She walked past me anyway. You're blowing this out of proportion, she said. Am I? She turned toward me. We're trying to protect you. You're not thinking clearly. There it was again. Not thinking clearly. A soft push toward incompetence. My lawyer thinks differently, I said. Her face changed. Just slightly. What did you tell him? Everything. Silence filled the room. Heavy. Measured. She crossed her arms. You don't trust me. The accusation hung there. I looked at her, really looked. The woman I raised. The woman who once cried when I left for night shifts. I trusted you, I said quietly. That's why this hurts. Her composure cracked for a split second, then hardened again. You're making this adversarial. No, I replied calmly. You did. She stepped closer, lowered her voice. You don't understand what we're dealing with financially. I understand enough to know you tried to add yourself to my house. It's temporary. So is trust, I said. That stopped her. We stood in silence. Two women. Same blood. Opposite sides of something invisible, but sharp. Finally she spoke. If you don't help us, we'll lose everything. Everything. The house had never felt this quiet before. Not even on the nights when the power went out and the world outside disappeared into darkness. This silence was different. It was heavier. It pressed against my chest, as if the walls themselves were waiting for something to break. After the argument with my daughter, after the cold words she spoke without even raising her voice, I walked through the living room and noticed how everything looked the same. The sofa I saved months to buy, the family photos on the wall, the curtains I stitched myself. But somehow, nothing felt like it belonged to me anymore. It felt like I was a visitor in a life I once built with my own hands. I replayed her words again and again. If you want to stay here, you need to help. No salary. We all sacrifice. Sacrifice. The word stung more than the demand itself. Had I not sacrificed enough? I remembered the nights I stayed awake when she was sick, the dreams I put aside when money was tight, the opportunities one never took because I chose to stay close to home. I never kept a record of my sacrifices. I never thought I would need to. Love was supposed to be enough proof. My husband tried to comfort me, but even his silence carried confusion. He didn't understand how things had shifted so quickly. One moment we were planning a family dinner, and the next we were being treated like burdens. He suggested we give her time. Maybe she's stressed, he said softly. Maybe. But stress doesn't erase gratitude. Stress doesn't turn kindness into entitlement overnight. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. Old habits never leave you. I made tea and stood by the kitchen window, watching the sun slowly stretch across the sky. For years, mornings were my favorite part of the day. They felt like fresh beginnings. But this morning felt like an ending. I wondered if this was how parents slowly fade from their children's lives, not with dramatic fights, but with quiet displacement. I decided to speak to her calmly, not to argue, not to accuse, just to understand. When she walked into the kitchen dressed for work, confident and distant, I saw a version of her I didn't recognize. She wasn't the little girl who once held my hand tightly in crowded markets. She was a woman shaped by ambition, by independence, by a world that tells people they owe nothing to the past. I don't want to be a burden, I told her gently, but I also don't want to feel unwanted. She paused for a moment, and for the first time, her expression softened. Just slightly, but then she sighed. You're not unwanted, but things are expensive. Everyone has to contribute. I can't carry everything alone. Carry everything alone. The irony nearly broke me. Parents spend their lives carrying their children, so they never feel the weight of the world too early. And when those children grow strong enough to carry themselves, they sometimes forget who built their strength. That day, I didn't argue anymore. Instead, I went back to our room and sat quietly. I realized something painful, but necessary. Maybe this wasn't just about money. Maybe it was about control, about power shifting in ways I wasn't prepared for. When children grow into providers, they sometimes believe they own the house, the rules, and the narrative. And maybe in her mind, she was simply being practical. But practicality without empathy becomes cruelty. By afternoon, I made a decision. Not out of anger, not out of pride, but out of dignity. I would not stay where I felt like a transaction. I began packing slowly, not dramatically, just folding clothes into a small suitcase. Each item carried memories. The shawl I wore at her graduation, the dress from her wedding, the old recipe book with stains from years of cooking her favorite meals. My husband watched me with worried eyes. Are we really leaving? He asked. Yes, I whispered. Before resentment replaces love completely. I didn't want our relationship to rot under the same roof. Sometimes distance protects what closeness is destroying. When she returned home and saw the suitcase near the door, her confident expression cracked. What is this? She demanded. We're giving you space, I replied calmly, and giving ourselves peace. For a long moment, no one spoke. The silence that had haunted the house all day now felt different. It felt like a mirror, forcing each of us to look at ourselves. I saw confusion in her eyes, maybe even fear, but pride kept her from apologizing. As we stepped outside, the air felt cooler than usual. The sky was turning orange, and I remembered the evenings when she would run toward me after school, excited to share stories. I wondered when those stories stopped. When did we stop talking as mother and daughter and start negotiating like strangers? That night, we stayed at a relative's home. It wasn't luxurious, but it was peaceful. For the first time in days, I slept without feeling like I was walking on eggshells. Yet deep down, my heart still ached. Love doesn't switch off just because respect disappears. It lingers. It hopes. It waits. Meanwhile, I imagined her sitting alone in that quiet house, maybe noticing the absence of morning tea, maybe realizing that presence is more valuable than financial contribution, maybe understanding that parents are not employees waiting for instructions. Sometimes, people only recognize warmth after it's gone. The next few days passed slowly. I didn't call her. I didn't want to force guilt. I wanted realization to grow naturally. My husband suggested we consider finding a small place of our own. Starting fresh, even at this age, sounded terrifying, but also strangely empowering. Why should independence belong only to the young? I began to reflect on something deeper. As parents, we often build our identity entirely around our children. We pour so much of ourselves into them that when they push us away, we feel empty. But maybe this was my moment to rediscover who I was beyond motherhood. A woman with dreams, skills, and strength that didn't expire with age. On the fourth evening, my phone finally rang. Her name flashed on the screen. My heart pounded. I let it ring twice before answering, trying to steady my voice. Amy, she said softly. Just one word. But it carried more emotion than all our arguments combined. There was silence on the line, but it wasn't heavy this time. It was fragile. I didn't mean to hurt you, she continued. I just felt overwhelmed. I closed my eyes. This was the moment I had hoped for. Not an apology forced by loneliness, but one born from reflection. I know life is hard, I replied gently, but don't make it harder by forgetting who stood beside you when you had nothing. She started crying. And in that sound, I heard my little girl again, not the confident woman guarding her pride, but the child who still needed reassurance. We didn't solve everything in that one call. Healing isn't instant, but we took the first step. She asked us to come back. I told her we would, but with understanding on both sides. Respect is not a favor, it's a foundation. As I ended the call, I realized something powerful. Sometimes, walking away is not giving up. It's teaching others how to value your presence. Love without boundaries becomes self-destruction, but love with dignity becomes strength. The silence that once felt suffocating had transformed into clarity. I wasn't just a mother who sacrificed. I was a woman who deserved respect. And perhaps in learning that lesson myself, I had unknowingly taught it to my daughter too. Coming back to the house felt different this time. The same door, the same hallway, the same framed photographs smiling down from the walls. But something invisible had shifted. When my daughter opened the door, she didn't just step aside, casually the way she used to. She moved with hesitation, almost humility. And in that small gesture, I saw growth trying to find its way through pride. The house no longer felt heavy with silence. It felt cautious, like everyone was choosing their words carefully, afraid to reopen wounds that were still tender. I placed my suitcase in the bedroom and stood there for a moment, absorbing the familiarity. This room had witnessed years of laughter, arguments, whispered prayers, and sleepless nights. It had seen us age. It had seen her grow. And now it would witness something else, change. That evening, We sat together at the dining table. No phones, no television, just 3 plates and a conversation that needed honesty. My daughter spoke first. I was scared, she admitted quietly. Scared that I wouldn't be able to manage everything. Bills, work, expectations. I felt like if everyone didn't help, I would collapse. Her voice trembled, and for the first time, I realized that behind her harsh tone was fear. Not disrespect, fear. The world outside had toughened her. Responsibilities had reshaped her patience. And instead of asking for support with softness, she had demanded it with authority. I would have helped, I replied gently, but not as an obligation. As family, there is a difference between support given from love and support demanded as duty. One strengthens relationships, the other weakens them. My husband, who had remained mostly silent during our conflict, finally spoke. We raised you to be strong, he said. But strength without compassion becomes loneliness. His words hung in the air, not as criticism, but as wisdom. My daughter lowered her eyes. I saw realization settling into her heart, not because we scolded her, but because we spoke calmly. That night I couldn't sleep, not because of pain this time, but because my mind was restless with reflection. Parenthood does not end when children grow up. It simply changes form. When they are young, we guide their steps. When they are older, we guide their character. Sometimes through silence, sometimes through distance. The next morning, something unexpected happened. My daughter woke up early and joined me in the kitchen. She didn't say much. She just started helping, cutting vegetables, preparing tea. Small things, but meaningful. I don't want you to feel like you owe me anything, she said softly. I just want us to work as a team. Team. The word felt lighter than sacrifice. It felt equal. But I also knew something important. Returning home didn't mean returning to the old version of myself. I had changed too. Leaving had awakened something inside me. A realization that my identity could not depend entirely on being needed. Love is beautiful, but dependency can quietly erase self-worth. Later that week, I made a decision that surprised everyone, even myself. I'm thinking of starting something small, I announced during dinner. My daughter looked confused. Starting what? Maybe a home cooking service, I replied calmly. People always love my food. Why not turn it into something of my own? There was silence, but not the uncomfortable kind. This time it was thoughtful. You don't have to work, she said quickly, perhaps afraid I felt pressured again. I'm not doing it because I have to, I smiled. I'm doing it because I want to. For years, my life revolved around caring for others, and I never regretted it. But somewhere along the way, I had forgotten that I also had passions beyond motherhood. Starting something new at this stage of life felt frightening, but also empowering. Growth is not reserved for the young. Within days, I began small. Word spread through neighbors and relatives. Orders trickled in slowly at first, then steadily. I wasn't earning a fortune, but I was earning something far more valuable, confidence. And something else changed inside the house. My daughter began asking for my advice again. Not about cooking, about life, about decisions at work, about handling stress. It was as if she was slowly remembering that before she became independent, she had once leaned on me completely. One evening, she came home exhausted and sat beside me quietly. I think I understand now, she said. You didn't leave because you were angry. You left because you were hurt. I nodded. Anger shouts. Hurt walks away quietly. She leaned her head on my shoulder, something she hadn't done in years. In that moment, I didn't see a grown woman burdened by responsibility. I saw my child again, and I realized something powerful. Children don't stop needing their parents. They just struggle to admit it. But this chapter wasn't only about her transformation. It was about mine too. I had learned that love must have boundaries. Not walls, boundaries. Walls block connection. Boundaries protect dignity. If I had stayed silently, swallowing my pain, resentment would have grown like poison. By stepping away, I gave both of us space to reflect. Sometimes, distance teaches what lectures cannot. Weeks passed, and the atmosphere in the house grew warmer. Laughter returned, not forced, but natural. Respect became visible in small gestures. She would ask before making decisions that affected all of us. She would thank me for meals. Simple words, powerful impact. But the biggest change was internal. I no longer feared becoming unnecessary. I understood that my worth was not tied to being needed financially or physically. It was tied to wisdom, experience, and love, things that cannot be replaced. One afternoon, as I packed food orders for delivery, I caught my reflection in the kitchen window. There was tiredness in my eyes, yes, but there was also strength. A quiet strength that comes from surviving emotional storms without losing softness. My daughter walked in and watched me for a moment. "I'm proud of you," she said unexpectedly. The word startled me. Parents spend their lives saying they are proud of their children. Rarely do we hear it in return. And when we do, it heals something deep. I smiled. "I'm proud of you too, for listening, because growth doesn't belong to one generation alone. It belongs to anyone willing to reflect." That night, as I lay in bed, I realized this chapter was not about conflict anymore. It was about balance, about understanding that love is not ownership. Support is not control. And independence should never mean emotional distance. The home that once felt suffocating had transformed into a space of mutual respect. Not perfect, no family ever is, but honest. And I knew now more than ever that sometimes the most powerful lesson a mother can teach her child is not how to sacrifice endlessly, but how to stand with dignity. Little did I know, however, that life was preparing another test, a challenge that would push our newly rebuilt bond to its limits once again. Because just when peace settles in, life often asks, have you truly learned the lesson? Peace is a fragile thing. It settles quietly, like dust after a storm, making everything look calm again. But sometimes beneath that calm surface, small cracks begin to form, cracks you don't notice until pressure exposes them. A few months after our reconciliation, life in the house had found a rhythm. My small home cooking service was growing steadily. I had regular customers now, office workers, neighbors, even a small school that ordered lunch twice a week. The kitchen, once a place of silent tension, had become my space of confidence. The sound of chopping vegetables, the aroma of spices, the warmth of the stove, they all reminded me that I was capable of building something at any stage of life. My daughter had also changed. She was more thoughtful, more present. We shared tea in the evenings. Sometimes she would sit with me while I packed food orders, asking about recipes, or laughing at small stories from my younger days. It felt like we were rediscovering each other, not just as mother and daughter, but as two women navigating life differently. But growth does not mean challenges disappear. It means challenges return in new forms. One evening, she came home later than usual. Her face was pale, her movements tense. She avoided eye contact and went straight to her room. I sensed something was wrong. A mother always does. At dinner, she barely touched her food. "Is everything okay?" I asked gently. She forced a small smile. "Just work stress." But this time I didn't believe it. The next morning, I overheard her speaking on the phone in a sharp, anxious tone. Words like loan, deadline, and penalty floated through the hallway. My heart tightened. Later that day, she finally sat down with us and told the truth. She had invested a large amount of money into a business partnership with a colleague. It was supposed to be a safe opportunity, a side investment to increase her income. But the partner had mishandled funds, and now debts were piling up. Legal notices had started arriving. "I didn't tell you because I didn't want to worry you," she said, her voice trembling. "I thought I could fix it myself." Fix it myself. Those words felt familiar. They echoed the same independence that once pushed us apart. But this time I saw something different, not pride, but fear of disappointing us. "How much?" my husband asked quietly. When she mentioned the amount, the room fell silent. It wasn't small. It wasn't something that could be solved overnight. For a moment, old memories resurfaced in my mind. The time she made us feel like burdens, the moment we packed our bags. A part of me felt the sting of irony. Life had a strange way of turning roles around. But love does not keep score. Instead of reminding her of the past, I reached for her hand. "We will face this together," I said calmly. Tears filled her eyes immediately. After everything I said to you, how can you still? Because I'm your mother, I replied softly. And family is not a contract. It's a commitment. That night I couldn't sleep. Not because I doubted her, but because I understood the weight she was carrying. She had tried so hard to prove she could handle everything alone. Now she was drowning in the very independence she once guarded so fiercely. The next few days were difficult. Meetings with lawyers, financial calculations, stressful phone calls. The house felt tense again, but not divided. This time, we were united under pressure. My husband suggested using some of our savings to reduce the immediate burden. It wasn't a fortune, but it would ease the penalties. I hesitated for a moment, not because I didn't want to help, but because I wanted her to understand responsibility fully. Support should strengthen, not enable. So before transferring any money, I sat with her alone. I will help you, I said firmly, but on one condition. She looked nervous. What condition? You will never carry your struggles alone again. Not to protect us. Not to protect your pride. Trust is not weakness. She nodded instantly, tears streaming down her face. I promise. As the days passed, I noticed something profound happening inside her. She was no longer speaking from authority. She was listening more, asking questions, seeking advice. The crisis, painful as it was, had softened her in ways comfort never could. One afternoon, she surprised me again. I want you involved in every financial decision from now on, she said. Not because you owe me help, but because I value your judgment. For years, I had given advice freely, sometimes welcomed, sometimes ignored. Now, she was asking for it intentionally. That shift meant more than any apology. The legal process moved slowly, but steadily. The dishonest partner was eventually exposed. Though some money was lost permanently, the situation stabilized. It wasn't a complete victory, but it was survival. And survival together builds bonds stronger than comfort ever could. One evening, after weeks of stress, we sat on the rooftop watching the sunset. The sky glowed in shades of orange and purple, reminding me of the day we once left this house with heavy hearts. I think this was my lesson, she said quietly. What lesson? I asked. That strength isn't about doing everything alone. It's about knowing who stands with you. Her words wrapped around my heart gently. I realized something in that moment. The first conflict between us had been about respect. This one was about trust, and both were necessary. Respect builds boundaries. Trust builds connection. Without respect, love suffocates. Without trust, love isolates. As the wind brushed against our faces, I felt a calm deeper than before. Not because life had become easy, but because we had become stronger. My cooking business continued growing. She helped me create a small online page to promote it. We laughed while taking photos of dishes, arguing over captions like two friends. The same daughter who once treated contribution like obligation was now proudly introducing my food to her colleagues. You should expand, she encouraged. Maybe hire help one day. I smiled. One step at a time. Growth doesn't need to be rushed. It needs to be rooted. That night, before going to bed, she hugged me unexpectedly. Thank you for not leaving when I made mistakes, she whispered. I held her tightly. Thank you for learning from them. As I lay down, I understood that this chapter had tested more than finances. It had tested whether our reconciliation was real, whether boundaries and forgiveness could coexist. And they could, because love that survives conflict is no longer fragile. It becomes resilient. But deep in my heart, I sensed that life was still shaping us. Not to break us, but to refine us. And I was finally ready for whatever came next. Just when life begins to feel steady, the past finds a way to knock on the door. It happened on a quiet Thursday afternoon. I was in the kitchen preparing a large catering order, my biggest one yet, when the doorbell rang. I wiped my hands on my apron and walked to the door, expecting a delivery boy. Instead, I found my younger sister standing there. We hadn't spoken properly in years. Family disagreements, misunderstandings about property after our parents passed away, harsh words exchanged in moments of grief. All of it had built a wall between us. Not the loud kind of wall made from shouting, but the silent kind built from pride. She looked older, tired. Life had not been gentle with her either. "Can I come in?" she asked softly. For a brief second, I felt the old pain rise in my chest. The accusations, the suspicion, the way she once questioned my intentions when we divided our parents' belongings. I had walked away from that conflict too, not because I was wrong, but because I was exhausted. But something inside me had changed over the past months. "Yes," I said quietly, stepping aside. She sat in the living room, her eyes scanning the house. My daughter came out of her room, surprised, but polite. They greeted each other awkwardly. History has a way of making even simple conversations feel heavy. After a few minutes of silence, my sister spoke. "I need help." Those 3 words carry more humility than any apology. Her husband had fallen ill. Medical bills were growing. Her children were still studying. She had sold some jewelry already. She didn't know where else to go. As she spoke, I noticed something familiar in her voice. The same fear I had once heard in my daughter's tone during her financial crisis. The same desperate attempt to stay strong while quietly breaking. Life humbles everyone eventually. I listened without interrupting. My daughter watched me carefully, perhaps wondering what I would do. She knew our history. She had witnessed the cold distance between us for years. "I know we haven't been close," my sister continued, tears forming. "And I know I hurt you before. But I didn't know who else to ask." The room felt smaller, the air thicker. For years, I carried that old wound silently. Not because I wanted revenge, but because betrayal from blood feels different. It cuts deeper. It lingers longer. But as I looked at her now, I didn't see the sister who once argued over documents and inheritance. I saw a frightened woman standing at the edge of uncertainty. And I remembered something important. Holding on to old pain doesn't protect you. It poisons you slowly. "I can't promise miracles," I said gently, "but I won't turn you away." Her shoulders dropped in relief. She covered her face and began to cry openly. My daughter quietly brought her water and sat beside her. I watched that scene carefully. 2 generations witnessing what forgiveness looks like in real time. Later that evening, after my sister left, my daughter turned to me. "You didn't even hesitate," she said. "I did," I admitted honestly, "but I chose not to let hesitation win." Forgiveness is not the absence of hurt. It is the decision to rise above it. Over the next few days, we discussed how much we could realistically contribute without damaging our own stability. My daughter insisted on helping too. "She's family," she said firmly. I noticed the shift immediately. The girl who once feared carrying too much alone was now volunteering to share someone else's burden. Growth had rooted itself deeply in her. When we visited my sister's home to deliver financial support and groceries, I saw gratitude in her children's eyes. I saw humility in her husband's weak smile. And I saw something else, reconciliation. Old conversations resurfaced naturally. We addressed misunderstandings from the past, not with accusations, but with clarity. "I thought you wanted everything for yourself," she admitted quietly when we spoke alone. "And I thought you didn't trust me," I replied. Grief had clouded both of us back then. Losing our parents had left us fragile, defensive. Instead of leaning on each other, we had pulled apart. Pain can either unite or divide. We chose division at that time. But now, life had given us another chance. On the drive home, my daughter looked thoughtful. "Why does family hurt each other so easily?" she asked. "Because expectations are higher," I answered. "We expect understanding without explanation, loyalty without effort. And when reality falls short, disappointment turns into resentment." She nodded slowly. That night, I sat alone on the balcony, reflecting on how far we had come. A year ago, I walked out of this house feeling unwanted. Today, I had walked into my sister's house offering support without bitterness. Life had tested me in different ways, as a mother, as a woman, as a sister. And every test carried the same lesson. Dignity does not mean distance. Strength does not mean coldness. Forgiveness is not weakness. A few days later, my sister called again, not to ask for help, but simply to talk. We spoke for almost an hour about childhood memories, about our parents, about recipes our mother used to make. Laughter returned cautiously, like sunlight after rain. Healing is not dramatic. It happens in small conversations. Meanwhile, my daughter's respect for me deepened in ways she didn't need to say aloud. I could see it in how she introduced me proudly to her friends, in how she sought my advice without ego, in how she listened when I spoke about balance and patience. One evening, she surprised me again. "I used to think being strong meant never depending on anyone," she said. "Now I think it means knowing when to forgive and when to ask for help." Her words felt like a full circle, because that was the lesson life had been teaching us all along. As I prepared for bed that night, I realized something profound. The hardest battles are not with strangers. They are with the people we love. And winning those battles does not mean defeating them. It means protecting the relationship. Chapter by chapter, life was reshaping our family, not into perfection, but into understanding. And for the first time in years, I felt something steady in my heart. Not just peace, but wisdom earned through storms. Yet deep inside, I sensed another challenge approaching. Not from outside this time, but from within our own home once again. Just when I believed our family had learned how to bend without breaking, life presented a challenge that tested not our finances, not our pride, not even our forgiveness, but our unity. It began with something small. My daughter had been working longer hours again. A new promotion was within reach, and with it came greater responsibility. Meetings stretched into late evenings. Phone calls interrupted dinners. Her laptop became a permanent fixture at the dining table. I understood ambition. I admired it. But I also recognized the warning signs, the tightness in her jaw, the impatience in her tone, the way exhaustion disguised itself as irritability. One night, after waiting nearly 2 hours for her to join us for dinner, my husband finally began eating quietly. I saw the disappointment in his eyes, though he said nothing. When she eventually came out of her room, distracted and still on a call, she barely noticed. That old, familiar tension brushed against my heart again. Not the same as before, but similar. After she ended the call, I spoke gently. "You need rest." "I need success," she replied quickly. The words weren't harsh, but they carried sharp edges. Success. I wondered how many families slowly drift apart chasing that one word. Over the next few weeks, her presence in the house became physical but not emotional. She was there, but not with us. Conversations shortened. Laughter faded. Even when she tried to sit with us, her mind seemed elsewhere. One evening, I overheard her arguing on the phone again. This time, her voice wasn't fearful, it was angry. "You promised this would be a partnership," she said sharply. "I can't keep fixing everyone's mistakes." When she ended the call, she looked drained. I knocked on her door softly. "Is this promotion worth losing your peace?" I asked quietly. She didn't answer immediately. Instead, she whispered something that shook me. "If I don't secure this position, someone else will. And then everything I've worked for will mean nothing." Nothing. I stepped inside and sat across from her. "Nothing," I repeated gently. "Your health means nothing? Your family means nothing." She rubbed her temples in frustration. "You don't understand how competitive it is." She was right. I didn't understand the corporate race she was running. But I understood something deeper, the cost of constant pressure. That night, I lay awake thinking about generational differences. My generation measured success in stability and relationships. Hers measured it in growth and recognition. Neither was wrong, but imbalance always creates cracks. A few days later, the breaking point arrived. It was a Sunday, the one day we usually spent together. I had prepared her favorite meal, hoping to create a small moment of warmth. My husband had even brought sweets from the market. But she received an urgent call and announced she had to go to the office immediately. "Can it wait until tomorrow?" my husband asked quietly. "No," she snapped. "Not everything revolves around home." The words fell like a stone in water, ripples spreading instantly. She froze, realizing what she had just said. Silence filled the room. I saw regret flash across her face, but stress refused to let her apologize. She grabbed her bag and left. My husband looked at me with wounded eyes. "Are we becoming secondary again?" he asked. I didn't have an answer. For hours, I sat at the dining table staring at the untouched food. Memories flooded back. The previous conflict, the suitcase near the door, the fragile rebuilding of trust. Had we truly learned? Or were we repeating the cycle in a different form? When she returned late that night, she looked exhausted and successful. The presentation went perfectly, she said, trying to sound cheerful. But the atmosphere was heavy. We waited for you, my husband said calmly. She closed her eyes. I'm doing this for us. And there it was again. Sacrifice framed as justification. I stood up slowly. We never asked you to sacrifice us, I said quietly. Tears welled in her eyes. But this time they were mixed with frustration. You think this is easy for me, she cried. You think I enjoy missing dinner? I'm trying to secure our future. And what is the future without presence? I asked gently. She had no answer. That night, the house felt colder than it had in months. The next morning, she avoided us. I let her. Sometimes confrontation hardens people further. Reflection softens them. By afternoon, she came into the kitchen and sat silently while I prepared food. I'm scared, she admitted suddenly. I paused. Of what? Of becoming average. Of not being enough. Her confession surprised me. All this time, I thought she was chasing success for ambition, but she was chasing it out of fear. I turned off the stove and faced her fully. Who told you that being present, loving, and balanced is average? I asked softly. Who convinced you that rest equals failure? She looked down. The world, she whispered. The world. It demands speed. It rewards exhaustion. It glorifies constant achievement. But it never sits beside you when you're sick. It never holds your hand when you're afraid. I won't stop you from growing, I told her gently. But don't let growth cost you your soul. She began crying, not loudly, but quietly, like someone finally releasing held breath. I don't want to lose you again, she said. The words pierced me. You won't, I replied firmly, unless you choose work over connection every time. That evening, she made a decision that surprised us both. She declined an additional project that would have guaranteed her promotion faster. Instead, she requested balanced hours. It might slow things down, she admitted at dinner. But it will steady you, my husband replied. For the first time in weeks, we ate together peacefully. The breaking point had not shattered us. It had exposed fear and forced honesty. As I washed dishes later that night, I realized something powerful. Every generation faces a different battlefield. Mine was survival. Hers is competition. But the enemy is the same, losing yourself in the process. Chapter by chapter, we were learning not just to love each other, but to understand each other. And understanding, I was beginning to realize, is stronger than agreement. But life was not finished shaping us yet. Because sometimes the hardest test is not balancing ambition and family. It's facing a truth you never expected to uncover. I always believed the hardest battles in life were the ones you could see. Financial struggles, arguments, misunderstandings. But I was wrong. The most dangerous battles are silent. They hide behind smiles, behind routine, behind "I'm fine." And we almost missed it. After declining the extra project at work, my daughter seemed calmer. She came home earlier. She joined us for dinner regularly. The house regained its rhythm. I allowed myself to believe we had finally reached stability, not perfection, but balance. But peace can sometimes be deceptive. One evening, I noticed something small. She was sitting on the couch, staring at nothing. Not scrolling on her phone. Not reading. Just staring. Are you tired? I asked gently. She forced a smile. Just thinking. Thinking. It became her new answer to everything. Over the next few days, her appetite decreased. She laughed less. Even when she was physically present, her eyes looked distant, as if she were carrying something too heavy to set down. A mother's heart senses shifts before the mind understands them. One night, I woke up thirsty and walked toward the kitchen. As I passed her room, I saw a light under the door. It was nearly 2 a.m. I knocked softly. No response. I opened the door slightly and found her sitting on the floor, back against the bed, tears streaming down her face. My heart dropped. She quickly wiped her cheeks. I'm okay. No, I said firmly, walking inside. You're not. For a moment, she tried to hold herself together. Then something inside her broke. I'm tired, she whispered. Not physically. Inside. I sat beside her on the floor. What's hurting you? I asked quietly. She hesitated. Then the truth came out. Despite stepping back from overworking, despite resolving financial stress, despite rebuilding our relationship, she still felt empty. She felt constant pressure to prove herself. At work, in society, even among friends who seemed to be moving faster, achieving more, traveling further. I feel like I'm always behind, she admitted. Like no matter what I do, it's never enough. Her words cut deeper than any argument we had ever had. This wasn't about ambition anymore. This was about self-worth. I gently held her hand. Who are you trying to outrun? I asked softly. She didn't answer. Because sometimes the answer is invisible, a comparison we never consciously chose, but quietly absorbed. The next day, I spoke to my husband privately. We both agreed. This was bigger than family advice, bigger than simple reassurance. She wasn't weak. She was overwhelmed. Mental exhaustion does not always look dramatic. Sometimes it looks like quiet sadness in a well-functioning person. That evening, we sat together and spoke openly. There's no shame in seeking help, I told her gently. Help? She asked confused. Professional help, my husband added calmly. Talking to someone outside the family. At first, she resisted. I'm not crazy, she said quickly. I shook my head. Asking for help doesn't mean you're broken. It means you value your mind. After days of gentle conversations, she agreed to see a therapist. I accompanied her to the first appointment, not inside the room, but to the door. She looked nervous, like a child on her first day of school. I'll be right here, I assured her. When she came out an hour later, her eyes were red, but lighter. I didn't realize how much I've been holding in, she admitted. Therapy became a weekly routine. Slowly, she began understanding something powerful. Her fear of being average wasn't about career at all. It was rooted in childhood pressure, the need to always excel, always make us proud, always justify every sacrifice we made for her. I was stunned when she shared this. I thought if I ever slowed down, I'd disappoint you, she confessed one evening. My chest tightened. All I ever wanted was your happiness, I whispered. She looked at me with tears. I know that now. Sometimes parents unknowingly create invisible expectations, not by demanding perfection, but by sacrificing so much that children feel indebted forever. She had been running not just toward success, but away from guilt. That realization changed everything. In therapy, she learned to separate gratitude from pressure, to understand that love is not a debt, that she did not owe us exhaustion to prove appreciation. And I learned something too. We must be careful how we model strength. If children only see sacrifice, they may believe rest is selfish. Weeks passed, and subtle changes began appearing. She started journaling. She took evening walks. She laughed more naturally, not forced. One Sunday, she surprised us by suggesting a short family trip outside the city. No laptops, she declared. I smiled. Progress. During that trip, sitting under an open sky far from deadlines and expectations, she looked peaceful in a way I hadn't seen in years. I feel like I'm meeting myself for the first time, she said softly. I realized then that this chapter wasn't about crisis. It was about awakening. Mental health is rarely discussed openly in families like ours. We speak about money, marriage, careers, but rarely about internal battles. Yet this was perhaps the most important lesson of all. Success without emotional stability is fragile. Strength without self-compassion is dangerous. One evening, as we sat together watching the sunset, she turned to me. Thank you for noticing, she said quietly. If you hadn't knocked on my door that night, I don't know how long I would have kept pretending. I held her hand gently. A mother doesn't stop listening, I replied, even to silence. The truth we never saw wasn't betrayal. It wasn't financial risk. It wasn't ambition. It was invisible pressure. And now that it had been exposed, it could finally begin to heal. But deep inside, I sensed we were approaching the final chapter of this journey. Not a dramatic ending, but a transformation that would redefine what family truly means. My name is Nana May, and this happened to me. I never thought a single GPS ping could unravel everything I believed about my life. I had spent weeks, months even, questioning my worth, my role, my very place in the family. And now, the answer was sitting in front of me, glowing on my phone. I stared at the location again. His car, parked at the same building where I had seen the concierge hand him a key 2 nights ago. My husband had said he was working late. He wasn't. And suddenly, I wasn't sure anything he'd said in the past 10 years was true. I felt my hands shake. My heart raced. I wanted to scream, to run, to break something. But I stayed silent. I didn't want to give them the satisfaction of knowing I had discovered their secret. It wasn't just him. The texts, the half smiles at dinner, the whispered phone calls, they were all pieces of a puzzle I didn't want to see. And yet, I couldn't look away. I opened the WhatsApp group chat, hoping for a clue, anything to explain the tension that had been suffocating me for months. Nothing. Just silence. Just the old messages from my daughter, each one now feeling like a trap I had walked into unknowingly. She had said, "You'll understand one day." Understand what? I wondered. Understand betrayal? Understand humiliation? Or simply understand that I no longer matter? I wanted to call her. I wanted to ask why. But what if she laughed? What if she said, "This is what you get for questioning me"? The fear of rejection, of shame, of becoming irrelevant froze my fingers on the screen. I remembered the lawyer's message from last week, the one that said, "Please review the documents before signing." I hadn't. I trusted them. I had signed. I had no idea I had given away more than I could ever imagine. Property, access, authority, everything. I stepped back, took a breath, tried to steady myself, but then I saw it. A folder, hidden in the bottom of his laptop. My name, written in his handwriting. I opened it. There it was. Everything. Every bank account, every legal document, every digital password. But it wasn't just numbers and codes. It was proof. Proof of a life I thought I controlled, but didn't. The house, the car, the accounts I had managed for decades. My own life had been slowly transferred, manipulated, controlled without my knowledge. And worst of all, it was orchestrated by the people I trusted the most. A knock at the door jolted me. My husband's voice, calm. Too calm. "Nana, can we talk?" I didn't answer. I didn't move. He pushed the door open, eyes scanning the room, landing on the laptop. My hands were still on the folder. He froze, and for the first time in years, I saw fear in his eyes. Not regret, not guilt, fear. "You found it," he said, almost a whisper. "Yes," I said, my voice shaking but steady. "I found everything." He swallowed. "I can explain." "Explain." I cut him off. "You lied. You manipulated. You controlled. For what? For her. For them." He didn't answer. And in his silence, I realized something terrifying. The truth wasn't just about him. It was about my daughter, too. She had orchestrated this slowly, subtly, pushing me to the edge without ever showing her hand. "I stayed quiet," I said, almost to myself. "I stayed quiet to keep the peace, to be the mother, to be the grandmother. And this is what I get." He looked down, unable to meet my gaze. The air between us was thick with everything left unsaid. I wanted to scream. I wanted to cry. But instead, I smiled. A small, dangerous smile. The kind of smile someone gives when they finally realize the power they always had. "I didn't know it yet," I said slowly. "But everything I had ever given, every sacrifice, every silent night, every moment I swallowed my anger, it wasn't over. It wasn't lost. It was all leading me here." I could see him panic, just slightly, in that subtle twitch of his jaw. He had underestimated me. My silence had been my weapon, and now I would use it. I closed the folder, carefully, deliberately. "I want answers," I said. "Not excuses, not apologies. Answers." My daughter's voice rang in my head, that cold, controlled tone she used when she wanted to remind me of my place. "You'll work for me, or you'll leave." Not this time. Not ever again. I picked up the phone and called the lawyer, the one who had sent the documents weeks ago. the one I had ignored. Yes, a voice answered. I need a full audit. Everything they transferred, every account, every property document, I said. My voice was calm, controlled. Finally, and I want it yesterday. There was a pause on the other end. That's going to take some time. I don't care about time. I care about truth. I want to know what I own, what I've lost, and what I can take back. Every last bit. As I hung up, I realized something. The fear, the humiliation, the betrayal, it had all led to this moment. And I wasn't going to let it end quietly. Not anymore. I looked at my husband. He avoided my eyes. And I knew something else. The secrets weren't just theirs to hide. They were mine to uncover. And I was done being invisible. Done being powerless. I closed the door behind me, silently, leaving him standing there, stunned. The folder under my arm felt heavier than I expected. It wasn't just papers. It was proof. Proof that I had been underestimated. Proof that they had made a mistake. And now, I had the chance to make them pay attention. To make them realize that I was not just a mother. Not just a grandmother. I was Nana May. And this was only the beginning. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if they would fight, plead, or disappear. But one thing was certain, they had underestimated me. And that mistake was about to cost them everything.